Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the Suffering for Art podcast. If you're just listening, I want you to know that we actually have a video podcast for the first time ever. And if you are watching, then you already know I am actually in a closet. I'm home for the holidays, and my thing is always you have to start. And I knew I wanted to do a video podcast episode, but I also did not have the most aesthetic background. But you work with what you got. And so we are actually in my parents' closet today. Fun little background. So tune in if you want to. I just want to say that I am so grateful for everyone who has tuned in. We launched last month, and the feedback that I've been given is incredible to know that other people are resonating with this message that I'm putting out, that people are actually wondering how to thrive instead of suffer. It's very cool. So please continue to send your feedback, rate the show, rate the podcast, wherever you're listening to it so that we can keep it going. Okay? Now, without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Money. How I wish we had never invented it. Like, did we as a society really sit down and say, yes, this system of constant bills, paying for food, and water is the way to go? Whoever came up with it, I will never forgive them. It truly gets under my skin that we've chosen a life where we need jobs to make money just to survive. Like, why? You've probably already caught yourself at some point in your young life saying, back in my day, things were cheaper. And yet here we are in 2025. Stuck in the same relentless cycle. What's even wilder is the reality of today's economy. Did you know the federal minimum wage in the United States has been $7.25 an hour since 2009? It's been 16 years. And aside from a handful of states that have raised the minimum wage, we haven't budged federally. In that same time, the cost of living has increased by 47%. Just to put that into perspective, the Kellogg CEO, yes, the cereal company, recently suggested that people consider eating cereal for dinner because groceries are so expensive. Imagine that. Cereal. The same cereal we're admitting is outrageously priced is somehow still the cheapest option for dinner. We live in a world where building wealth has to be a deliberate strategy. It's not something that happens by chance or reward. If you want to be middle class or upper class, we can't sit back with a catering side job and wait for some long lost uncle to leave us an inheritance. Although, let's be real, if that happened, I wouldn't complain. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. What's worse is that we also can't wait around for industries making billions of dollars like the arts to suddenly decide to pay us more. That's the frustrating part. There's money in the arts, but it rarely finds its way to the creatives actually making the art. Let me set the scene. Y'all know I have to do this. You know what I'm about to tell you. You've experienced it firsthand, but I have to set the scene. Let me do this, please. It's the 1980s, and you're an actor in Phantom of the Opera. It's Friday morning, and you roll out of bed, grab a coffee and a bagel from the corner bodega for about 60 cents each, and you jog to catch the subway for another 60 cents. After rehearsal, you stop at a payphone to chat with your mom, and on the way home, you pick up your weekly paycheck, $1,000. Here's the wild part. That $1,000 paycheck actually covers your expenses. Rent is $374, yes, a month, and you're spending about $500 per month on essentials. You have enough left over to save and still enjoy life. Now, in today's dollars, that $1,000 paycheck would be worth $3,300 per week. Adjusted rent would be about $1,915 per month. And you'd have breathing room after paying your bills. Now let's talk about today. On Broadway, the minimum weekly salary is $2,439. The average rent for a one-bedroom in New York City is $3,859. Add in utilities, a subway card, taxes, agent fees, union dues. The math simply doesn't work. At the top of their careers, many Broadway actors are left with about $1,800 per month. And that's without kids, student loans, medical bills, or nights out. And what about actors working in regional theater? A typical regional gig might pay $300 per week and lasts only a month. After that, it's back to auditioning and hustling for the next paycheck. To make matters worse, only 10% of actors are actually working at any given time. That means 90% of actors are either in between jobs, working side hustles, or trying to make ends meet. This financial struggle isn't just an actor problem. It applies to all creative fields, whether you're a writer, visual artist, musician, filmmaker. The challenges of balancing your passion with financial stability are very real. Many of us are living gig to gig, project to project, hoping the next big thing will bring a windfall. But relying on hope alone isn't sustainable. That's why planning is so important. As creatives, we often live in this cycle of uncertainty. One gig ends and we're left scrambling for the next opportunity, hoping it comes before the bills are due. It's not just actors, musicians, writers, visual artists, filmmakers, we're all in the same boat. The nature of our work can feel unpredictable, and that unpredictability makes financial stability seem impossible. But what if we could create a buffer, a safety net that gives us breathing room when life throws its inevitable curveballs? That's what an emergency fund is for. It's the foundation of financial security, the thing that keeps everything else from falling apart when the unexpected happens. And trust me, the unexpected will happen. I've been there. One time I was trying to move out of an apartment and I had painted the walls. I knew I had to paint them back. I moved everything out of the house and all I was left with was a paint can, a paint opener, a paint tray, napkins, and painter's tape, if I remember correctly. So you may be wondering, how did I open the paint can? I used a knife. The only thing left in the house. Why that knife wasn't packed, I really don't know. But I took that knife and I tried to open a paint can and I ended up stabbing myself in the hand. And rather brilliantly, I might say, I used the napkins and the painter's tape to make a makeshift bandage. And then I hobbled my way to the ER that was 5 minutes down the street. And yes, I had to pay that bill. And no, I was not ready for that bill. Life will throw something random at you, I promise. Emergencies rarely are planned for. Whether it's something random like that surprise move, losing a big project you were counting on, an emergency fund gives you a peace of mind to handle it without your life coming to a screeching halt. Your emergency fund should cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses. For example, if your monthly costs are $2,000, your goal is $6,000 to $12,000. You keep this money in a high yield saving account so it grows while it's sitting there. And I'll pause right here to make sure to say you can get a downloadable PDF if you go to the description box. And we will actually use this PDF throughout this episode because I know talking money can sometimes be difficult if you can't see it. So that's also why I'm doing the video podcast. So if you want that downloadable PDF, I'm going to refer to pages and everything so that we can work together to make this the best thing ever. Okay. So on page 4, you'll actually see a list of recommendations I have for high yield saving accounts. Now, back to it. Once your emergency fund is in place, it's time to focus on your secondary saving goals. These are the things that excite and motivate you. Your next big creative project, buying a car, upgrading your equipment, or even taking that trip you've always dreamed about. You can start small here. Maybe your secondary goal is $1,000 for a new piece of gear or $3,000 for a short film project. Whatever it is, write it down, put it into your budget, and let that number motivate you. You'll find space to outline your secondary goal on page 5 of the PDF. The key here is to have a purpose for your money. It's not just about stashing away cash for the sake of saving. It's about creating opportunities for the future that you want. Now comes the part that ties it all together, your creative budget. When I say budget, I don't mean something restrictive or depressing. Think of it as a tool that helps you plan. So you can have money for your life, your bills, your art, and your fun. Too often, we get to the end of the month, pay the bills, throw whatever scraps are left at creative projects, or we stress about spending that money on creativity because we're worried it might not pay off. This budget is designed to break that cycle. Here's the plan. I recommend using the 50-20-20-10 rule, which is on page 6 of the PDF. 50% of your income goes towards bills, things like rent, utilities, transportation, subscriptions, any other essentials that you have. 20% is for creative projects, things like classes, equipment, renting studio space. Another 20 is for your savings, your emergency fund that we talked about, that secondary goal, retirement or investments. And 10% is just for fun. Yes, fun. Eating out, seeing a movie, buying the things you've had your eye on. This money is guilt-free and just for you. Let's put this into practice with an example, okay? So you'll find it on page 7, the example that I have. So let's say your monthly income before taxes is $4,000. First, we need to calculate how much will actually land in your bank account after taxes. In New York City, taxes are federal, state, Social Security, and Medicare. Typically, they take around 30% of your income. It's a lot of money. So to figure that out, you just multiply your income by 0.3, okay? If you don't know math, I'm so sorry, ask ChatGPT, okay? So after you take out taxes, you're making around $2,800 a month. All right, so then once we apply the 50-20-20-10 rule, you have 50% for bills, which is $1,400, 20% for creative projects, which is $560, 20% for savings, which is another $560, and 10% for fun, which is $280 for the whole month, okay? On page 8 of the PDF, you'll see a mock-up of a monthly budget using these exact numbers, and here's how it might look. You'll see in the bills section on the PDF that rent is $1,000 per month. Your utilities are sitting at $100. Health insurance is at $50. Groceries are at $200. Subway is at $132. And so that ends up totaling to $1,482. So we're actually over what we want to be at, the 50% amount. So that means we'll have to take some of the money from a different section, if that makes sense. You always want to start with your bills because we are not going to get evicted just because we're trying to stick with a budget, okay? Bills always come first, then savings, then creative, then fun. That's how I do it. I think it's the best way to make sure you have security and you're actually reaching the goals that you have. All right? So with that being said, we do that for every single section. We go through our savings, you have your emergency fund, your secondary savings goal, and maybe investing. Then you have your creative side, which classes can be $180 per month. Studio space is $80. Website is $30. Domain is $10. Subscriptions are $120. And then $100 for miscellaneous things like union dues, etc. And you're sitting at $519. If you remember, that's actually lower than what we wanted of the $560 because we had more money for our bills. I hope you're sticking with me. Make sure you're using the PDF. It makes it so much easier. Then we have our fun section. Eating out, we put $70. Movies, we put $30. A new outfit, we put $60 in your caffeine addiction. Yes, I know my people because I'm one of those people. We have $79, making us have $239 for the month, which is also lower than what we wanted in the first place. So that's every single cent put into purpose. There is no goal left behind. You know exactly where your money is going and why it's going to that place. A monthly budget is great for the big picture. Sometimes it helps to break it down even further, and that's where the weekly budget comes in, which is on page 9 of the PDF. You'll find space to calculate your weekly budget, and it's very simple. You just take your monthly numbers, every single one of them, and you divide it by 4. Okay, for example, if your monthly fund budget is $280, that's $70 per week. Yeah, we're doing math. Proud of you guys. If your savings goal is $560 for the month, you'll set aside $140 per week. Okay, this will give you a clear sense of how much you can spend each week without going off track. And on page 10, there's an example of the weekly budget to guide you. On page 11, there's a blank one for you to fill in with your own numbers. Now that all the math is gone, let's be real. Making a budget is one thing, but sticking to it is the hardest part. Life happens. Temptations arise. Sometimes it feels easier to ignore the numbers altogether. And trust me, I have been there. Over time, I've picked up a few tips and tricks that can make sticking to your budget not only manageable, but a little more enjoyable. Make it a social event. If you're someone who struggles to sit down and look at your finances, ask a friend for help. Set a time to meet for an hour, hold each other accountable, and make it fun. Put on music, get snacks or coffee, or do a remote video call if that works better. Having someone else there can make the process feel less intimidating and way more enjoyable. The next thing you can do is give yourself a reward. Sometimes the promise of a little sweet treat is all the motivation you need. Tell yourself, if I can sit down and plan out my budget for the month, I'll treat myself to blank. For me, it's ice cream. Maybe it's a new book, takeout at your favorite spot. You want to romanticize the experience. So maybe you're at home, you turn on some cozy background music, light a candle, grab your favorite drink, and make budgeting feel like self-care. Another thing is to go old school. Use cash. This one comes straight from my childhood. My mom used to carry around a folder with tabs for different categories like food, gas, clothes, entertainment, you name it. Every paycheck, she would withdraw the exact amount of cash she needed for each category and stick to it. There was no swiping, no Apple Pay, no overdrafts, just cold, hard cash. It might sound old-fashioned, but it works. And then something that I also find that I need to do after I've taken out cash is to lock my card. I kid you not. I lock my debit card and my credit card because it's so easy to just Apple Pay because it feels like cash and money isn't real. But when I actually have to hand somebody cash and I see it slowly depleting, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's girl math. I don't know. But I stick to cash and I lock my cards. Another great thing is to set aside time, like actually plan it out. Pick a non-negotiable day each month to sit down and look at your finances. It doesn't have to take hours. It can be 20 to 30 minutes. But once you get the hang of it, it actually takes less time. You look over your spending from the past month, you adjust any goals that you have, you plan for the months ahead, make it feel like less of a chore and more of a ritual. For me, that means cozy socks, a candle, classical music, ordering takeout. Find what works for you and make it something you actually look forward to. Next thing I suggest is to actually visualize your goals. Write them down. You can post them with sticky notes on a wall, create a vision board. Seeing what you're working towards every day can be a very powerful motivator, and it reminds you why you're saving. Maybe it's going to Paris, so you have the Eiffel Tower on your wall. It helps you say no to those little temptations. Another great thing is to automate your savings. If you're someone who tends to forget or get tempted to spend first, set up an automatic transfer to your savings account every time you get paid. It's like paying yourself first, and it takes the guesswork out of the equation. This budget isn't about being perfect. Life will happen, and some months you'll stick to this budget perfectly, and others you won't. That's okay. Give yourself grace and adjust for the next month. The important thing is to make progress and to stay flexible. By creating and sticking to this budget, you're giving yourself the gift of stability in an unpredictable career. You literally can't ask for anything better. That stability, it allows you to keep creating, living, and thriving. The reason why there are multiple sections to this is because we shouldn't focus on one goal. It shouldn't be, I just pay my bills for the month. I am scraping by. It shouldn't just be, I am only saving and I don't have a life. It should be, I get to fulfill my heart's desire to create. I get to also have fun and go out with my friends while knowing that I have a safety net underneath me in my savings. I'm investing for my future, and my current present moment is also being taken care of with my bills. That is what this is for. So download the PDF, watch the video podcast if that helps, and start taking control of your finances. And remember, every dollar you save is one less dollar you'll have to scramble for later. Let's make 2025 the year you stop suffering for your art and start thriving. If you like this episode, please rate the show, leave a comment, DM me questions that you have, DM me comments. Let me hear your thoughts. It means the world to me when I get to. Thank you for tuning in.